Well, this is Jared with Stampede Blue, and this is the Indianapolis Colts post-game wrap. And the Colts won today at home in a grind fest against the Jaguars. The final score 29-26. Colts have won 3 games in a row for the first time in 3 years, and in the first half of this football game had 300 yards of offense. That's the first time that's happened since 2016. And then the second half, it looked like both teams kind of tightened the screws defensively. But really it comes down to the Colts winning today because they have guys like Eric Ebron and Andrew Luck and guys like T.Y. Hilton that are just really special players. And I was thinking about this past week about as the season kind of drags on, how do you continue to win football games when teams kind of know your game plan? Today, in the first half of this football game, it really looked like the Jacksonville defense was on their heels the entire first half, as though they had never played together before. The first touchdown there to Ebron, as soon as the camera panned back, you could see the linebackers for Jacksonville jawing at each other, as if to say, like, that was your guy, I know that was your guy, right? And then Ebron really blew up right in the first half, right? He had the handoff for the touchdown, which if you're a football fan like I am, you had to be shocked that he had the ball in his hand. Most of the time, they do not hand that ball off. But it was a shock that Andrew handed the ball off, and I think that's why the Colts won today. And if you really go back and watch the first half of this football game, to me, that demonstrates the Colts' potential. And then the second half of the game, you really have to credit the defense for stepping up. I understand that from if you're not a real big football fan and you watch this game and you think the Colts barely won, and I understand that. And you can also say things like the Colts were not able to run the ball, but you have to admit the Colts stopped the run. They turned this into a one-dimensional game. I would take Andrew Luck over Blake Bortles every day of the week, and it kind of showed. And it shows in scoring the football. And that's just one of the things. It's easy enough, bear in mind he's a starter in the NFL, to take the check down. If you look at the average yards per completion for these two quarterbacks, Andrew Luck's average completion is about a yard greater than Blake Bortles. And I know that in the beginning part of the season, a lot of people were saying, he's only averaging about 6 yards of completion. This is because when you're not fully confident in what's in front of you, particularly with Andrew Luck and the Colts as the offensive line, Blake Bortles appears to lack the confidence to push the ball downfield. He will pat the football, he'll take the check down, and that's not how you beat the Colts. If you'll remember, when we played the Redskins, we had this conversation, right? The Colts turned the Redskins offense into a one-dimensional offense. And as a result, Alex Smith took a check down, and if I remember correctly, Chris Thompson had like 14 catches in that game. If you also understand, Chris Thompson hasn't really played much since then. So the point I'm trying to make is that if your defensive front, and credit today, Anthony Walker, the Northwestern product, second-year player for the Colts, and I would say Geathers had 10 tackles today. Darius Leonard, the NFL's leading tackler, had 8 tackles today. With Kiko Alonso left to play, Miami plays Green Bay this afternoon. Your Rookie of the Year candidate, Darius Leonard, should lead the NFL in tackles, unless Kiko Alonso goes off, by the way. But like I said, there was a lot of positive things to see in the first half of this game. I really thought there was a good chance the Colts could score 60 points. And I think it showed that there's a little bit of pride in Jacksonville left in the way they played in the second half. Former Colt Dante Moncrief had a big game. I think he had 3 catches for almost 100 yards and a touchdown, and really was a reliable third down weapon for Blake Bortles. And again, like I said, I can understand some fans' frustration looking at the way the defense plays, but I kind of understand. The more I see, the more I understand. If your defensive front is first able to shut down the run and then generate a pass rush later on in the game when you've completely eliminated the run from a probability, which is what happens when you score 29 points and a half. you force your opponent to score the ball quickly because they know they have to score multiple times, and they have to continue to outscore your offense. And if you look at the way it went, Jacksonville only scored like once a quarter. The Colts scored 29 points and scored 14 or 15 points in each of the first 2 quarters. So it's really hard to catch up when you're behind, and the Jaguars historically have struggled to play from behind. And that's because, in my opinion, Leonard Fournette is great, but he's no MJD, right? And Blake Bortles, in my opinion, does not have confidence in his outside receivers, and he doesn't think that they're open because he doesn't target them unless they're on an inside crossing or a crossing pattern or an inside route. And instead, he tends to check the ball down to the running back for the easy completion. And those completions are good, and they do keep the sticks moving, and they do allow your offense to move the ball downfield. But then what happens is when you get in the red zone is that your playbook gets even smaller. And now you can't really check the ball down from the 5. And if you look, the ball kind of bounced the Colts' way today, right? We had the big fumble in the end. Credit to Kenny Moore today. He had a heck of a football game, including, and then Malik Hooker, of course, recovered that fumble there. So there you go. And then Tyquan Lewis came out of nowhere and had a big pressure on Blake Bortles late in the game. It was a game-changing play. And from Colts' perspective, you got to be really happy about the future and the potential of the Colts. Again, like I said, won 3 games in a row, and not against the best in the NFL, right? We beat the Raiders, the Bills, and the Jags, who are clearly on a slide. And then this upcoming week, the Colts have the Titans, and the Titans just beat the Patriots. So it's going to be a kind of a test for the Colts this year. Is it the Titans' year, or is it the Colts' first year with Frank Reich? We win games that are close. We put ourselves in position to win games. And, in the NFL, we only got to win about 9 or 10 games. You just got to be just on the other side of 500 to go to the playoffs as a wild card. So certainly great first half for the Colts today, and way to step up defense, way to make big plays defense today in the second half of the game to kind of equalize the keep away strategy. If you've been a Colts fan for a long time, what happened in the second half of this game today is exactly what happened to Peyton Manning during his career. Teams went out of their way to keep the ball into their hands, and having to play from behind. That's reminiscent of the success of Peyton Manning. If the Colts have the ball and are able to move the ball, they're going to score a high percentage of times, and it showed in the first half. And again, I get it. They only had really like 4 or 5 possessions in the second half. They didn't need to score on 2 of them. But the Colts are right there. The offensive line has not allowed a sack in 4 games. I wonder what the NFL record is for not allowing sacks for an offensive line. And it looked like in the first half of the game, the Colts weren't able to run the ball up the middle because I think they were trying to trap, and I think the man over the trapping guard was following him into the hole and then creating havoc, which is the right play. So, I think the Colts early on in the game tried to establish a run up the middle and weren't able to do so, and I posited that maybe the Colts should have set up more of a man-blocking scheme and run the ball between the guard and tackle instead of trying to run it up the middle. And they did look like they had a little more success when they did that. And then, of course, like I said, Andrew Luck is Andrew Luck, and I'll take him over just about anybody in the NFL at this point. I believe Andrew Luck has thrown for 3 or more touchdowns in 6 games in a row, and that the only other 2 quarterbacks to have ever done that are Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. So I'll leave you with that. I mean, I'm certainly looking at the Colts like, man, we're real dangerous in the future, and we have weapons, and they're developing. I mean, if anybody saw Jordan Wilkins come onto the field and then just explode, and you're like, whoa, that's what you want to see. You want teams to spend a lot of energy to stop Marlon Mack from establishing the run. And then when Mack goes out and the defense thinks they're getting a break, you send in a guy like Wilkins. and then all of a sudden you're on your heels again. So really good win today, really good first half, and then of course held on there at the end. Ball kind of bounced your way, right? Like got a missed field goal, missed a blocked extra point, and then the fumble late. So could only really harp about the officiating, and we don't even do that here. So this has been Jared with Stampede Blue. This has been your Indianapolis Colts post game wrap. Have a great week, and we'll see the Titans next week.